Happy New Year. We're back for a new Heart to Heart episode. And Ilea had proposed a really interesting topic, and I'll let her introduce it.
So when Leia and I were going to film today, I thought we had some topics we were throwing around, and something this morning, a series of events, it led me to sort of start thinking about something, and it's fear. Fear is, it can sound quaint when you're talking about a rare disease with, no prognosis and no, certainties. But fear of loss of family, friends, career, purpose. Those are things that go with a lot of diseases. But then I thought I chalk up a lot of my fear about this. And as a psychiatrist, I do try to do some self reflection and therapy. And I thought, oh, I'm afraid of, not being a clinical physician. That's my biggest fear. And this morning I was supposed to work at a homeless shelter and I couldn't because I couldn't walk. And so there's that. And it made me think, it brought that feeling of fear that I'm not what I used to be. I'm not the psychiatrist that is at the shelter and doing this and, volunteering, in the prison. That's not who I am anymore because of this disease. And then I thought it's, because I'm getting over that, of the fear of not being a clinical physician. There's plenty to be a doctor about that's not prescribing medication. And then I thought, you know what, though? Actually, you're not scared of not doing clinical medicine because that comes with its headaches. And I've done it for many years now. And inpatient, outpatient, residential, every type of, clinical setting. So I thought, I'm not scared of that. And I'm scared of what society will think of that. When I couldn't volunteer at the homeless shelter because of this immobility I felt I have today, I felt I'm not going to see these colleagues that I used to work with, and I might not run into these people so they won't know what I'm up to and that I'm still doing stuff in the community. And although I can't offer my clinical services, I was armed with a mentee that I think is wonderful that's starting a private practice, that's gearing up a private practice. And so it really made me think like, huh, I'm afraid of what society thinks of me. And what struck me so hard about that is not that it's an uncommon fear, it's actually a quite common fear, but not for me. I'm the gal that did whatever I wanted my whole life. Didn't listen to the naysayers about, not going to be a doctor. It's so. I never listened. I came from a family that was just non-conformist by nature, and two older sisters that paved the way to be renegades and do whatever we wanted, wear whatever we wanted, say whatever we wanted, if it within limits. And but it was really the culture and upbringing. And then I went on to continue very much in that vein. And I think that's the way Leia and I, one of the ways that we got so close is that we're both sort of fearless in when it comes to what people think about us. So although I don't have a classic what people think about me fear in terms of my lifestyle or what I wear or what I do or how they might qualify my life, in that I don't have children or things like that, I am still fearful of what people, society, will think of me for not having the purpose that I thought I would have. It's that silly. It's that stupid because I have a lot more to give. As and especially as we go on with this endeavor of advocacy together, Leia and I realized how much it's giving to the community, arguably more than I used to do, be prescribing for one patient at a time. And but I realized like it's as deplorable to me to care about that than it is to care about what somebody cares about what I'm wearing at the grocery store. So it really is like, I don't care about what people think. I care, and in it, and I don't care about what society thinks. But in fact, turns out I do. It just has a very specific thing for me. I can wrap it up into a neater package than maybe some people because I was single-mindedly focused on being a clinical physician until the day I died, my whole life since 3 years old. And I think that I realized, like, that's a fear I'm going to have to process. I'm going to have to find a sense of who Ilea, not the doctor, is, the clinical doctor. And so I just wanted to say that, even if it's a fear that you think you don't have, you might have
You
it.
said it's silly, but it's not a silly fear. I want to just point that out. It's
Thank
not
you.
silly. Go on, but it's not silly.
No, go ahead with that because I'm processing this and I realized it this morning. I need help.
Well, because I have fear as well, and I had a lot of fears actually. And SPS comes with a lot of fears because it has its unknowns. It has, like, it's a spectrum. No real two people are alike. No people really, like, you can relate to people, but no one is exactly the same. There's no trajectory. There's no, so, this year has been a very, very interesting year in terms of working in my head how to live with SPS. Because as I was recovering from septic shock, and I did it without really thinking about it, like physically, because, I had to recover physically. And I realized that just in December, that I had to gain strength again. It wasn't just about walking again, like, stiff, like before and stuff like that, but it was regaining a sense of being, a sense of everyone looked at me, like looks at me in the last 10 days, and they're like, you've changed. There's color in your face again. You look alive. And it struck me the whole year. I worked on being again, but mentally, there too many fears. And I worked on some of them. The fear of the unknown, I cannot control. So I let that go. The fear of seeing my body decompose, I also let that go because it serves no purpose. And if you're going to live with this disease, it's a fear that can poison your thoughts and spiral out of control. So I worked on that and let that go. And my biggest fear, and my only fear actually today, is not society. I've also given up on that and what people think and the assumptions and everything, because today I feel grounded. And it took me almost a year. And that's work that I did on myself. And it's for me. And if I feel grounded, I don't care if anyone else around me doesn't understand it or doesn't acknowledge it. So the society part, I don't care. The friends that I've lost, I mean, beautiful memories, but put aside, the fear that I have is my brain, my brain. And what do I mean when I say my brain? I've always been an overachiever, a career woman, someone that likes to write, and someone that has always capitalized on knowing that my brain was my biggest asset. From a young age, I've known that, I'm smart, and my brain was just, I was smart and I can do things. And I'm scared that I'm slowly becoming a little bit less, not smart, but a bit slower because of, the tiredness, the pain, the meds. the septic shock.
The septic shock.
I was going to say all the autoimmune diseases, just living life and all the work that I've done. But this fear of losing the ability of speaking fast, being able to multitask. And I can't do that anymore. And that is that is a huge fear. On Wednesday, I'm doing a brain MRI, and I'm scared because there might be nothing, and it's just the
Which
process.
might be more scary because it's, again, less answers. Not saying you want something on your brain MRI, but sometimes you get a negative result and you're happy, and then it makes more fear. Well, then what is it? My brain really is deteriorating. It can invite, well, then what is it then?
I'm petrified. I'm petrified because what if I lose my ability to think, my ability to write, my ability to analyze, my ability to sense people, my ability, everything that the brain does,
You're
my
smart.
ability.
It's your cognition. We call it cognition.
Yes, and to a certain extent, it's, it's slowing down, and that scares me way more than the disability, than the handicap, than the deformities of my legs and my hips and
Mm-hmm.
my, because who is Leah without her brain? And that's my fear. And when you picked that topic, I was like, oh, oh,
And
because
one thing I have to say is that while you're talking about this, I feel that, throughout my training from med school all the way up to residency, I I remember counseling folks that were coming out of the ICU for an extended period of time, like you were in, and telling them about, cognitive deficits they might see at first and how those will improve into, different things that might happen to their body over time, that will get better. That was always like, but I did those consults and they were very important because I'm not saying every ICU patient got one, but many did because I did many. So I know that that kind of counseling could have helped maybe assuage your fears because you'd say, well, they told me this was going to happen. And, but when you say fear, that's one reason why, because I'm also a brain girl, I'll give up everything else. That's the last thing I'm going to give up, right? And we're nerds, guys. And I think that I'm not afraid of it though, because I had to do that. I had to counsel people in like, okay, meds, sedatives, they can make you feel cognitively a little bit less sharp. I know what is maybe making me cognitively a little bit less than I used to be. We talk about reading a lot. We're voracious readers that trickle down into these people that are in bed all the time, mostly, but don't read books. And that is horrifying to both of us. And I keep saying, well, we're gonna. It's just that we have to get more stable and then we'll have the attention to read and, really read like hardcore books like we like. And so I think that the knowledge that or the work that I did that I'm so petrified of not being able to do again, really helped me not have that be my biggest fear. Otherwise, that fear of losing my cognition, my brain abilities, of multitasking, as you said, of speed, of just be brain activity, would trump the fear of what are people gonna think if I'm not a clinician. So I think that, it's funny because where you come from and what you've learned in your past and the type of work that you've done really informs the fears. I I was not I'm nothing. I'm still not a PR kind of person. Leia is built for this. She's done, she was the director of an NGO when we met, and I don't have that. She made me get my first social media account at like 38 or 30. So, I think that the fact that you didn't have that fear, you just went right ahead and said, so we'll do this and we'll do that. I was, traumatized thinking about the loss of privacy. The fact that you guys all have enough video now to make deep fakes of me. I mean, all the things that I used to really, really be like scared of was you didn't have the same fears. And so by having different fears, we've really helped each other worked out lots of different fears. Like, oh, I'm scared of this, and it's like, don't be. I was that when I took that thing and then I didn't. So it's cool. And it's like, oh, okay, thanks. So there goes that fear. So processing was very helpful in that we had different fears. I think a lot of people in the community suffer with the same fears because they're more isolated, haven't found a buddy that they could, process with, really intensively. So I think that can be a very hard thing for many people struggling with these rare diseases, neurological diseases, and SPS, especially in this
And
case.
I really think
Um,
that you need to talk to someone who is going through similar things, because I don't think, and this is not, an insult to anyone else, but I don't think that you can do the same process with someone that is not going through the same thing or feeling the same way or understands that, because it takes an extra special thing. It takes being, you know, for example, having SPS in both are, because it makes a difference for this. Because, when I talk about losing my brain or the ability of being as sharp, it I need someone that really understands it, because it's not that it's downplayed, but it's like, don't worry, you'll be
yeah,
okay. Still very sharp. And I've noticed that, like, I have immediate short-term memory at the moment. For example, it's been a thing since, like, it's been 6 months. Like, I would, like, sit down and then forget what I was about to want to do, and I notice it, and I really notice it. But the people around me don't really notice it that much. They've just about started to, and it's not a big deal. But when I talk to you or anyone else in the community, they understand what I mean when I say I'm fearful of losing this. And I think it's important. And on this journey next year, where I said in one of my reels recently, where I want to live in the moment and in the
mm,
present, I have to work on this fear, because I think I'm my worst own enemy. Because with the brain, if I'm scared, I add on stress.
it gets worse.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I have to take my own advice basically. But with society,
Exactly.
I want to challenge you and tell
Yeah,
you that you are here, you are a Leo, like you said, you are doing different things, and life took a different path. And you even said yourself that it's fulfilling, and that it's fulfilling in a different way. And even surprisingly, I mean, for me anyway, fulfilling in a way that I never thought could be possible,
definitely.
and a beautiful way. I feel accomplished to have done the before and to be doing this today.
Yeah,
And I feel lucky.
yeah.
And so, I mean,
And I
we're
think you said lucky. We always talk about gratitude and how it can really be the antidote for a lot of bad things that come with this disease. And, for instance, I always assumed I would be in the military. I'm a Navy brat. I started pre-med Air Force ROTC. I would be an officer, but I was going to be in a fighter jet. I mean, and to look back and think, now I remember the age to where I was too old to even sign up for Army Reserves or do it something in the military vein. And that this, my career path, but also my disease made it a physical impossibility to be any part of active duty military service. And although I have served veterans for many years and then veterans in active duty, and I feel that, it came to me in a different way, but that was a loss that I had to mourn, but it was mournable. It's like, okay, Aaliyah, you're not in the military, you're not a veteran, you're not active duty. It was mournable because I could say, okay, then I have to get over it. And I think that these more deep fears that are hiding under all these ones that we've processed are the ones that can hold you back, can make you depressed, can make you deeply, deeply unhappy when, really in your core. And
Make
that fear is our enemy. And you said we're our own enemy. We produce our fears.
I agree. And if I can say one thing about society that I learned this year is that society will have empathy, but then we'll turn the page and move on. And
Yeah.
that's why I start this new year where I don't care about society because today I'm standing up on my own 2 feet and doing the best that I can. And I'm doing it for me. And because I do it for me, I hope that it turns out giving out positive vibes for the ones that are around me, the friends that are around me. I should have started with the family and my husband, but and even Tequila, who's just sitting next to me and wants to say. But I mean, you know, if I do it for me and I've clicked on that, the people that notice it, they stay.
Yeah,
And society can, I'm here.
exactly. Yep.
I'm, I am Leah. I'm here. I can do it.
Yeah,
And that's good enough. So you're
exactly.
right.
It's good enough. Yes.
You can do
We have
it.
nothing to prove to anybody. And whatever constraints we're trying to deal with, everyone's will be different. Some people will have religious pressure, some people will have familial pressure, some people will have career pressure, but there's pressure on any human being. So when you can't do stuff, that pressure comes down on you like a ton of bricks. You feel a disappointment at all times to all people. And it's really sad, but the more you can really mean when you say, you know, forget them. I'm doing the best I can. And I mean, just for us with a 7 hour time difference to come together and to film, there's a sense of accomplishment in that when we're done. I'm always like, oh, I'm elated. There's something in me that feels better and excited for when our episode comes out, and then I hear all the, you know, the scuttlebutt about what people liked, and that is exhilarating. And I think that, like gratitude and embracing it, I think we have to, really attack our fears head on. It can't be something we say we do. It has to be something that we do and then get below the surface ones, get to the deep ones that are holding us back.
Because at the end, they affect the actual disease. They make it worse.
Yeah,
You know, me being stressed about my brain
makes it
makes
work.
my SBS worse because I'm
Yes,
stressed. It makes me nervous. It makes me sometimes, not very uh, nice to be around when I'm in a bad mood. And again, my own worst enemy. And whatever happens on Wednesday, for example, I was told by my doctor, if there is something, Why are you thinking negatively? You might be able to help.
Hmm.
And that never crossed my mind. For me, it was all negative. If there is
Yeah.
something, it's the end of the world.
Yep.
So I'm embracing. And that's something that I want to try to move forward with. You know, Leia is Leia, her brain is her brain, and let's see what happens and try to let go because I'm doing the best that I can.
Yeah. And I
And
think that people who didn't grow up with that encouragement or have it inborn, you've got to acquire it. Who cares? Do it, do you, as people say now. It's something to have courage to be a nonconformist in a way. As people who are severely disabled, we have to be nonconformist, and that's a tough thing for people to do. We generally human, we like to be part of a group, and we like to, but this makes you a very different cat than everybody else. This is like you got to make it into your own thing. You have to, you're going to end up being an eccentric, a recluse, all the things that society deems weird. A little bit, you're going to be a lot of those things with this disease. And that's cool. Like, be eccentric, um, and a lot of the artists that we celebrate, the writers that we love, they were weird. That if I never like to look at the biographies of my favorite artists because I love the art. I'm not in it for the artist, like I'm in it for the art. So I don't want to go there. And it's just something I've always not done. And then people will tell me stuff about my favorite writers or artists, and I'm like, interesting. But what I learned a lot from when they tell me that is that most of these people were weird, and people thought they were, you know, odd until the day they died, and maybe didn't get famous till way after they died. And so, this has no clock on it. It's just something to work out. But I think that fear needs to be addressed for each of us head on. And if that means writing down your fears, making it very practical, or talking to somebody that you can just spitball with, either way, it's got to be done. Otherwise, every morning you wake with fear.
it's
Even
heavy
if you have nothing to do, you wake with fear. Does that
and
make
it's heavy and it's heavy and
sense? Heavy?
the thing, it's part of the invisible symptoms of SPS.
Yes.
And so I think it's very interesting that we both discussed like our worst fears. And I think we should do an episode in a couple of months and see where we at with those fears in
Good
our head.
idea.
Because I think it would be interesting to hold each other accountable since
Yes.
we're going to work on it and to share, as we always do in those conversations, where we're at.
Hmm.
Because it's going to take work and time. But I think it'd be interesting to see what we have to, talk about in a few months. Because I'm
I think
definitely,
that's a great idea. And it's the courageous thing to do. The fearful thing to do would be, okay, let's never talk about this again. And, just and to tiptoe around it. We're going to face it head on and then check in.
I want to be happy this year. So I'm being honest.
Yeah.
And so that's why I want to hold myself accountable
Yeah.
and talk about it in a couple of months.
Yeah. I like it.
Alrighty.
And so, coming to you from two women who I really thought had a genetic absence of fear gene. I generally think of us as having zero fear. That's how I describe Leia to people. And so, even us, we're fearful. So if you're scared of anything, it's cool, and we'll keep talking about this. But for today, thank you guys for tuning in, and Happy New Year, and looking forward to this year's topics and discussions.